sudden it got cold.
So crazy. So crazy. All right. Speaking of crazy, here we are live on YouTube. Welcome, everybody.
Hi. Hello, everyone. It's so good to be here. And we have Amy Arnold with us today.
Hi, guys.
Yeah. So we have Amy and we have Shane. I'm not muted, right, you guys?
We can hear you good.
Yeah,
good.
Perfect. I'm still trying to figure out the background logistics. Like if you could see me under the surface, I'm like, okay, is everything where it's supposed to be? So we don't have to keep recording. So, okay, well, we're just going to dive right in today. And I purposely called this time together Confessions of a Business Owner. Because, over the last several weeks on the Don't Be Fooled podcast, which is also what you're seeing here, this feed is we have been talking about the 4 most important things that a business owner would focus on every single day of their life, or even the leader that has multiple departments and multiple moving parts in an organization. It really comes down to 4 things. And these 4 action items feed the 2 most valuable objectives in business, which is always acquiring new ideal clients and getting those clients what they want. It's that simple. So when you've got these 2 priorities in place, these 4 things create predictability. So we are still talking about the second most important action item to do every day, which is development. Now, we've talked about development from developing your marketing that brings in those ideal clients and predictably and consistently. We've even talked about some key performance indicators around that idea of development for your marketing. And now today, I really wanted to very quickly unpack this idea of development of your model. Now, it's really interesting to me because most owners and leaders that I have worked with, they come to me with, I know what I do. Okay, awesome. And then once we start to do the research component for marketing, we start to find, wow, okay, what my ideal client really wants, I'm not really making a priority in the model. So now what do I do? And this fear of I might lose out on something. If I actually let go of what I've been doing, I might lose it all. Anybody else relate to that fear?
Yep.
Right. And so then we see this habit of indecision come up. They start to kind of at times get stuck in deciding what to do about developing what this market wants from their model. And the habit of indecision, it really comes when we are choosing to be afraid of what we're going to lose. But when it comes to developing a model based on the end user as the target, right? Taking ourselves out of the target and putting the end user in the target, we can never lose. I'm telling you that right now. Like money becomes the indirect approach of focusing directly on the end user's wants and needs. And it was really funny, you guys, because I was just doing some research and I found this really old video on employee decisions. And they found that in a very small research group that they did, that 98 out of 100 working employees were in their current job because they lacked the definite decision to purposely choose an employer. So basically, they just said, I need a job. I'm going to take a job. We talked about this last week, Shane, where we said, hey, like if you don't know what to do, go sell something.
Go sell something.
Be a sales guy, right?
Yeah.
So, when faced with this market research, and we've all been in it, Amy, you and I have been journeying together now for close to or almost over 2 years. We're right in that, right in that vein. Shane and I are going on 4 years together. So this research component is central to all of our conversations because we want to stay in touch and a bit obsessed on what the end user says that they want. But it's interesting to me, we all have hit this point at some point in our conversation, right? Where we saw what the research wanted. We saw what the end user really wanted from us. We started to look at our model and say, oh my goodness, there's some things I'm going to have to rearrange in the delivery of this product, whether it's a service course or it is an actual done for you service, or it's a reoccurring revenue service. We have to start looking at that more intentionally and attending to developing it in a very specific way that we hadn't really done. And I've experienced, and with Amy, you are an incredible, you're just incredibly committed to your end user, to your family, to what you want, to what you know you're good at. And so this is not you. And Shane, it really, I've never seen this in you, but I see a lot of owners that when they're faced with that information and they start to look at the model, rather than doing what is necessary to get more of that target market what they want, they retreat. And they go back to hoping and praying that someone will send them referrals. They go back to relying on referrals, and the drippy, drabby business kicks in, or they just freeze like deer in a headlight, shut down, and either stop all things altogether, or they just go get a job. I mean, I'm just curious, Amy, for you, like when you hit this research place with the end user for marketing, and then you started to evaluate your model, what happened?
Yeah, I think all three of those options it was like whack-a-mole of whichever one. The first was
whichever one comes first. Yeah.
Yeah. The first was actually the don't look at the information, because it was a little too confronting. And not that it was hard, but it's just different, and my brain didn't want to compute different. And it had been doing things for so long the same way that change, even though I obviously came to this model for a change, I just resisted in all different sorts of ways. It came up in some fascinating ways. And then it would shift to the one of stop everything, and some of the reasons were legit, some not so much, some self-imposed, a little bit of both, right? And then the one that would pop up often was the just go get a job. I hadn't had a job in a very, very, very long time, but I know for me that when that starts to creep up, because it has over time, it's really time for me to look at myself, what's going on? It's I don't want to take action. I don't want to change. And that's a kind of a warning flag for me, like an indicator. And it's not that it's wrong. Jobs are great. Careers are great, but I know that I love running my business. So anyway, it's just interesting. I experienced all three of those.
It's interesting to me, Amy, as I hear you talk about this resistance, I can identify with that, right? Like when you're confronted, that word you use, confronted, because that's what the research does. It confronts, our beliefs, right? And so for me, when I was first starting out and I had my model, I had this approach where it's okay, I've got my model and that thing is just set in stone and it'll always be that way. And what I fail to realize is that models are evolutionary because markets are always evolving. So part of my resistance was I was not wanting to come off of this belief that there was one way to do it. I would even, bad customer, if you were just different, this model would work. It's certainly not me. You ever feel that? It's if these people would just get this right, then my model would work, by golly,
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I know for me, I really had to decide, there was this D-Day. It felt like it was do this or walk away, you're going to have to, for me, I had to start to look at making the decision and then sticking to it with this conviction of, I am going to keep, I'm going to keep the end user as the priority right now. With all integrity, when I look at that research, I can say, and I can see from my history, I've helped some people achieve this outcome. I'm going to have to be more intentional about actually paying attention and learning to read patterns and signals that this ideal client is putting off in the model. So I'm going to give you a really tangible example of this, because it's hard to give a tangible example here in a very short period of time on video, but I'll give you this example. There was this day that we had a maternity clothing boutique. And the owner of the second largest franchise in the country for maternity clothing boutiques entrusted me to help her with her business in Charlotte. So it was interesting because I'm there, and most of the time I was there alone. So when the end user, the prospect would walk through the door, I would pay attention to where they went and what they asked for first. And after a period of time, this pattern emerged, and the ideal client, the one that became an evangelist, they could see the value of what we were putting out. The price tag was understandable because of the value they were receiving. And so I said, I want more of these people. So I started to pay attention to what they were touching and what they were asking, and started to rearrange where the product was placed. So when they came in, the very first thing that they saw was exactly what they wanted. And the very first answer or question I asked was to the answer that I already knew was coming to the question. So by giving them what they wanted at the very beginning, drew them deeper into the experience of the store, and they ended up staying longer, quite frankly, buying more, telling more people about it. It's a very niche industry. You got like a few months with these clients. And we did really great results just by changing that one thing. It wasn't like a massive, I needed to revamp the color of the branding. I needed to pay attention to the uniqueness they were asking me for without asking for it. Does that make sense?
Totally does. And I think the thing to not miss in that you just shared is anticipating the customer's need, which is asking the question that you already know the answer to. Anticipating that customer's need is not some mystical experience. It's based off of you continuously developing the model, researching, evaluating, observing where are the patterns, and then responding appropriately to that in order to meet your prospect where they are. Yeah.
And that's what we're talking about when we talk about definite decision, which requires tremendous courage. I mean, you think about the 56 guys who signed the Declaration of Independence, like they staked their very lives on the signing of this document. I mean, for you and me that are owners and leaders, the decisions that we make about our business model, how it's delivered, who it's delivered to, when it's delivered, we're not staking our lives on these things, but we are staking our very economic freedom on these decisions. Things like financial freedom, time freedom, the impact we leave, the peace of mind are not within reach of the people that will not demand, plan, and expect these things to happen when making developmental decisions. So when we talk about this, Shane, just real quickly, we're wrapping up. I'd like you and I and Amy, I'd love to hear, anything you'd like to contribute to these three things. I really found that the real winners in this game of leadership, the legacy owners, the legacy leaders, that they really have three things in common when it comes to making sound decisions. The first one I found is patience. That they are careful about decisions, but they make them anyway. Shane, is there anything that you've observed around that patient process?
Yeah. So I was thinking about this when we talk about patience. I hear people say, "Boy, I just got to get more patient. I got to get more patient." And I would say you don't necessarily need to become more patient. You just need to define your plan. Right. So absent of a plan, impatience is going to increase because you are searching and you're a scavenger for something that's going to plug the hole or whatever it might be. So when you're able to put a plan in place, your patience becomes purposeful. Right. No longer is my model designed by default. Right. It's designed with intentionality. Spontaneity is the opposite of patience in my mind. Like, and spontaneity happens when I don't have a plan. So what I'm saying is this: if you lack patience right now, my guess is you do not have a plan concretely defined that you are convicted will bring you the outcome that you're looking for. That's why you're impatient. It's not that you have a character deficit of patience. It's that you haven't properly put a plan in place that will allow you to now step back and evaluate. Without a plan, we have no basis for judging opportunity by. So we always will fear that we're missing out. We always will be concerned that we're making a mistake. We'll always wonder what if. So the first step to create patience, to allow patience to emerge, is to put the plan in place.
Yeah, that's so good. Amy, do you have anything you want to add?
Yeah. The thing that comes right into my mind isn't necessarily patience. I know that that's the topic we're talking about, but it's kind of hidden underneath is my inability to like pause and slow down for a little bit. I will tell myself I'm so busy. I'm so good at what I do. I'm immersed in other people's businesses because I'll help them with certain things, and use that as the excuse to not slow down, to take a look at what I need to develop the model, to really dive in and figure out I'm good at a lot of things, but where is my highest value to deliver to these clients? And I can't just do that on the fly because I'd never really stopped to do that. Right. So it took kind of insiding out and like looking back, and it's patience because I was impatient by continuing to just forge ahead without really stopping and looking. And, that was like a huge aha for me.
Oh, Amy, I can so relate to that. I can so relate to that. So the second thing that I have seen is that these leaders and influencers and owners, when making developmental decisions, development decisions on their product, on their model, the delivery of those things, they go and spend time understanding, not just listening, but actually seeking understanding from those that they serve really well. And that's not a big group within anyone's client group. It's like upwards of 20% at the very most. For us, one thing that we really pay attention to is just the questions that people ask us over and over at different stages of the consulting conversation. Like there's 6 phases to this consulting relationship. It never expires. I have very long relationships with my clients, but I actually put no expiration date on it because I understand that to develop and grow and scale a business requires time and attending. And you can't do that in 6 weeks. You can't do that in 6 months. It's ongoing. And so one thing I pay attention to, and the one thing that the 3 of us talk about, is what are they asking you over and over? Where are they saying, wow, that was a big breakthrough moment for me. When you said this, or when you used this tool, or you gave me this assessment, it changed everything for me. Like, these are the things we're looking at. So we know what to do more of, but we're also listening for where they begin to atrophy, maybe where they stop showing up as much, right? There's more excuses at certain phases of a service provider's process than others. Those excuses are telling us something. Something is not working for them and they don't know how to articulate it. So we have to pay attention. Shane, you have anything to add there?
I think you got to check your ego at the door.
Yeah, you do.
You just got to put it down and know it's not personal. They're not, this is not a judgment of your worth and value. It is just an assessment of whether or not you're meeting the need that your client demands. Like, that's the big question. So you got to check your ego at the door. Yeah,
that's true. That's true. Okay. And last but not least is they really are not controlled by fear. It doesn't mean they don't feel it. It doesn't mean that they don't experience from time to time, but they've got, they have put it in its place. Fear, I can't remember, this has been circulated so much, but really this idea that fear is false evidence appearing real. So one thing we talk about a lot is what's actually happening. Okay, so you feel like your marketing isn't working, but what do the KPIs say? What do the key performance indicators say? What does the return on investment look like? All right, so you feel like people are not buying this product anymore, so you want to add in new product, but what does the conversion from that product, what is the number? Like, what is actually happening here? And really staking your claim on what's really happening, not on what we feel is happening. Make sense?
Yeah, it does.
Yeah.
Fear, to me, fear fuels indecision, right? Like when I'm fearful, I am not going to decide much, right? Like I'll excuse, I'll justify, I'll blame, I'll procrastinate, but I'm not going to decide.
Yeah.
So the better we get at managing that fear, because it doesn't ever go away. Like you just get better at dealing with it. But when the facts become clear, the decisions are easy.
Yeah.
So don't let the fear fuel the indecision. Let the facts move you forward, right?
Yeah, that's
And
good.
if I can just add the facts, the right facts, like we can be looking at I don't like to say wrong data, data's data, but it might be the data that's not important, right? What are the KPIs really? Some of them are super tangible, some of them are a little bit more abstract, but it's something that's been pre-decided that helps take the emotion out. It helps me so much.
Yeah, that's so good. That's so good. And with that, I mean, that's such a powerful point. We're going to sign off today, but I want you to know we believe so strongly that systems run businesses, but people run those systems. And so we are curious to know what parts of this conversation today might have helped you become a better controller of those systems. So we'll talk to you soon.